Okay, so I'm gonna just give you a very quick demo of the method that I outlined in the quite lengthy presentation that I did earlier. This is my Anki, and this is my Danish part. I've been watching a lot of Danish drama, so I want to learn a little bit of Danish. I'll take you into my deck collection here. So I've got this Anki deck set up. And very simply, all I have is I have two cards. I have 14 cards, 7 cards here, which equals 14 notes. So that comes out as 14 different ones. So I have this, and I have the Danish, and I have the English on the back, and then I have the sentence here in the audio. And I don't have any vocabulary items. There are no single words here. These are all sentences here. Okay. So I've just done lesson 1 of the danishclass101.com course, and I'll give you a look at the card.
Du er god til matematik, er du ikke?
It's very, very simple. There are two cards set up. One has the Danish here, and then one has Danish and the answer in English here. So when I see the Danish, this is just on the front. When I see this is just a learning. And when I see this,
Nana, du er god til matematik, er du ikke?
When I see this here, when I see the English prompt, I have to say the Danish version of that. So that's basically my cards. I have these things. I've named the card an MTM, which is a Michel Thomas method type card, because I'm really into the Michel Thomas method of learning here. So that's it, really. So those are my cards. The other thing that I have to show you as well is that I review all of my cards. So I don't actually have an options group set up for this. So I'm gonna add my own options group here. Danish Class 101. Now I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that because what I do is I actually suspend each group. If I had more than one podcast's worth of cards, I would suspend all of those, and just every day I would go into the card browser and I would unsuspend them. So I would only study one group. But my reviews, I'm going to change this to something ridiculously high, like 500. I'm going to turn off this Bury related reviews until the next day, because this has a nasty habit of sending card 2s, the second card, the actual language production card, to the next day, and I don't want that, so I'm going to uncheck that. I'm going to set this maximum reviews to something ridiculous like 500, because I want to review all of the cards that are due. So that's the only change that I'm going to make there. If we have a look here, I've got my German parts here. I've not studied the German for a while. I've got 294. That's another card for one of my classes. Today I've studied Spanish and French, and that equaled about 307. Well, it equaled exactly 307 cards in 52 minutes. So that's what I was doing, and that's what I did today. So I'll go into the Danish, and very, very simply, this is what happens. I see the English, and I have to produce the Danish. If I can't remember, I just click on show answer.
Du er god til matematik, er du ikke?
So a lot of these things here, there's a lot of gold in these sentences. We can see here that there's a lot of crossover. Du er god, you are good. Til matematik, at math. Du ikke, aren't you. So we get quite a lot here. We learn that we can say at mathematic. We learn this, and then this is a noun here. Du is you, is are, God is good, you are good. So we just need to remember chunks of these things. We don't need to remember the individual words. We just need to remember du er good, til matematik, du ikke. Okay, we don't have to remember the individual words. We just have to remember, and your brain will actually do this. Your brain will chunk these sentences down.
Fedt. Kan du hjælpe mig?
Ja. Zaden off. I think that.
Jo, sådan der.
Zaden da. Okay.
Nana, du er god til matematik, er du ikke? Jo, sådan der.
So what will happen is that as you passively learn the sentences, as you passively learn the grammar and the vocabulary, the ones that they produce will be infinitely easier than the ones that you have to produce. So you'll probably be doing a lot more speaking. But that's the point. Fet. And then it's hjælpe med.
Fedt. Kan du hjælpe mig?
Hjælpe.
Ja, selvfølgelig. Nå, du er næsten færdig.
The other thing to
Jeg
mention,
vil gerne have mere tid til mit valgfag.
the other thing to mention is that it doesn't actually matter what the content is, because a lot of the vocab will cross over. So you're drawing in very broad strokes here to begin with the vocabulary. What the main thing is that you need to remember is that you need to get the structure. So a lot of the sentences will be long like this. They'll be in the context of the conversation, but you won't actually need to memorize these sentences. These are not useful sentences. The content is useful. Some of the content is useful. Some of the collocations are useful. Till matematic, that will be useful. Do a god, that will be useful. That little phrase there, you are good at something. To be good at something is obviously a phrase that you'll be using quite a bit. Nana, du er god til matematik, er du ikke?
Nana, du er god til matematik, er du ikke? Fedt. Kan du hjælpe mig?
So you'll be getting these things, you'll be getting these phrases, and your brain will be chunking these things down. You won't actually remember these things. The intonation and the speed will come later, so you will need to take on a large volume of these sentences to actually become anywhere near fluent. I think I'm at the French pod that I'm up to. I've got 1120 cards, so that's 500 and something cards altogether. All of these cards down here. These are all the cards that I've got. So you can see here that I've got. These are my suspended cards. This is what I'm going to be studying tomorrow, and I will only do this. So I will focus on just one or two things at a time, and then I'll review all the cards that are due today. So tomorrow, this is the unit that the quote-unquote unit that I'll be studying. So I will just be looking at these sentences and trying to figure out the grammar and try and produce the language myself. So that's pretty much how I study. I think it's a great way of studying. You get a lot of speaking time. You get a lot of the structure. A lot of the situations, a lot of the conversations that they create at Innovative Language and that they use with the Japanese pod 101.com or French pod 101 or Danish class 101.com. A lot of these conversations, the actual context isn't that important. They tend to be off the wall, and the context of the conversations tends to be a little bit more off the wall. They're a little bit more ridiculous. They're a little bit more out there. That actually helps with some of the memorization. The more extraordinary, the more off the wall, the more bizarre the situation is that you can place it in context. That will all help your memory, and that's what you're looking at. You're looking at remembering these chunks of phrases. Du er good, til matematik, du er ikke. That's all you're trying to remember. This doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It's going to be a long slog. I'm up to 45 hours on the French, and I'm on something like the third. Yeah, there's like 3 out of 4 courses. It was beginner, lower beginner S1, lower beginner S2. I'm on upper beginner S1 now. I think there's a Gengo French, which covers social media phrases, but I'm not sure that I'm going to study that. So that's basically what I do. I sit here, I have flashcards, I do a lot of reviewing, I have a lot of repetition. If I go into the stats here on this French pod beginner here, this is just for a year. I got a lot of reviews here. These are all the cards reviewed. the 44 hours it takes me about. So yeah, it's gone up a little bit. I was on 4.7. I think I was on 5.7 or something like that for a card. But yeah, there's a lot of repetition. It's all of the cards that are due on a day, and then maybe 14 new cards. So that's it. That's about it. There's a lot of gold in the sentences. You do need to notice. You do need to have your wits about you. You can't just take on. You can't just digest all these sentences. You do need to think about it. You do need to look for connections about why something is different all of a sudden. Why there was one thing. Why collocations will be different. Tous les jours instead of chaque jour. You need to look at that. You need to think about it. Look at the patterns. Really look at the who you're talking about. Are you talking about a man? Are you talking about a woman? Are you talking about someone who told you something? Is there a modal verb? Is it something like I can't understand you? So we've got can, can't, and then understand. You need to think about this, and then you need to kind of piece together. Go out on a limb, take a little bit of a risk getting it wrong. And then once you get it right, bizarrely what will happen is that you'll never get it wrong again. That's the really weird thing that I've noticed with this. So that's how I study. That's how I learn. I'm gonna have to get back on the horse with some of these cards down here. I have been I've kind of taken on a little bit too much. So I've kind of narrowed it down basically to a little bit of Japanese, and then the 3 Romance languages: French, Spanish, and Italian. But the Italian is giving me more problems, so I tend to shy away from that. But I just wanted to show you with my Danish how things work and how I structure my study. So I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you again in another video.